Hi there and welcome. I am Christy Wilson, a BCBA with over a decade of experience in ABA supervision. If you have ever felt like you're constantly putting out fires, reacting to problems instead of preventing them, you are not alone. Supervision comes with challenges, supporting RBTs, ensuring client progress, and managing administrative demands. It is so easy to fall into a reactive cycle, feeling overwhelmed and always one step behind. But what if there was a smarter way? What if we could prevent those fires before they even started? Through research and experience, I've discovered strategies that shift supervision from reactive to proactive, reducing stress, increasing RBT growth, and ultimately improving client outcomes. And that is exactly what we're going to explore in this training. Think for a moment about your current supervisory style. Do you find yourself reacting to issues as they arise, putting out fires throughout the day? Or are you able to step back and take a proactive approach, setting the stage for growth before challenges even emerge? Let's take a look at why being reactive doesn't serve you, or your team, or the clients that you're working with. Reactive supervision doesn't just create short-term stress. It has lasting consequences for both supervisors and RBTs. In the immediate term, supervisors find themselves constantly managing stress, juggling unexpected challenges, and feeling like they are always one step behind. This reactive cycle leaves both supervisors and RBTs overwhelmed and unsupported. The long-term effects are even more concerning. Research says that inconsistent supervision hinders both technical and soft skill development in RBTs. Eek. This lack of structured feedback contributes to frustration, lower job satisfaction, and higher turnover rates. For supervisors, the constant crisis management cycle limits professional growth and it increases your burnout too. Ultimately, clients receive lower quality care when their providers don't have the support that they need to succeed. By shifting from reactive to proactive supervision, though, you can break free of this cycle, reduce your stress, and create an environment where both you and your RBTs can thrive. The key to a more efficient and sustainable supervision model is a shift from reactive to proactive. Proactive supervision is about anticipating challenges and preparing your RBTs for success before issues arise. It's about providing feedback that focuses on skill development, growth, and reinforcement in real time. Instead of waiting for mistakes to happen, proactive supervision aims to prevent those mistakes by consistently reinforcing positive behaviors, providing targeted feedback, and setting clear, measurable goals. The benefits of proactive supervision include some of these. Reduce stress. Who doesn't want that? By addressing potential challenges before they escalate, you can prevent burnout and frustration. Continuous skill building. Regular, consistent feedback helps your RBTs to continuously improve their practice. With proactive supervision, you're not just reacting to mistakes, you're helping your RBTs build mastery and confidence in their skills. And increased motivation and engagement. When RBTs know that supervision is not just about fixing mistakes, but about supporting their development too, they are way more likely to be engaged and motivated. This aligns with Deci and Ryan's 2000 self-determination theory, which emphasizes the importance of autonomy, competence, and relatedness in fostering motivation. In proactive supervision, assessments, feedback loops, and regular check-ins become tools for continuous improvement. Hattie and Timperley in 2007 emphasized that feedback is the most effective when it is timely, specific, and focused on building skills and progress. With a proactive approach, you'll be able to identify growth areas, provide actionable feedback, and help your RBTs make meaningful improvements over time. Supervisors who implement proactive feedback systems see increased competency development in their RBTs, a higher level of job satisfaction, and lower turnover rates. Proactive supervision fosters an environment of continuous learning and improvement, benefiting both supervisees and the clients receiving services. Instead of waiting for problems to arise, you have a system in place that helps you stay ahead of the curve, catching issues early, setting actionable goals, and measuring progress in real time. This proactive approach leads to smoother day-to-day operations, less stress for everyone involved, and ultimately better results for your clients. Supervision isn't just about supporting your RBTs, though. It's also about maintaining your own well-being. As supervisors, we often pour our energy into helping others while neglecting our own needs. Raise your hand if you do that. But here's the truth. Your well-being directly impacts the quality of the supervision that you provide. Proactive supervision isn't just a strategy for your team. It's a tool to help you work smarter, reduce stress, and prevent burnout for yourself. Balanced supervisors are more effective, more creative, and better equipped to support their teams. Some strategies that you can try in effort of targeting your own well-being and balance as a supervisor could include some of these. Establish clear start and end times for your workday. Avoid letting supervision spill into personal time. Use tools like the one I'm going to show you in this training to streamline your supervision process, leaving you more time for professional and personal growth. And fatigue and irritability and decreased motivation are signs that it is time to adjust your workload or your supervision approach. Listen to those, listen to what your body is telling you. Now, I want you to think for a moment. Let's pause and reflect. How do you currently balance your supervision responsibilities with self-care? Write down one strategy that you can implement this week to prioritize your well-being. All right, so let's talk about Ascend. The Ascend RBT assessment is more than just a tracking tool. It is a comprehensive system designed to support proactive, data-driven supervision. With Ascend, you can track competencies, anticipate RBT developmental needs, and provide feedback before issues escalate. It allows you to set clear milestones, structure your supervision, and help your RBTs grow consistently without the stress of reactive catching up sessions. Ascend isn't just for tracking progress. It's designed to foster nurtured development. It helps you create an environment where growth is continuous, not reactive. And in doing so, it helps you as a supervisor feel more balanced and less overwhelmed by the challenges of the job. By the end of today's course, you will be able to differentiate between reactive and proactive supervision and understand their long-term impacts on RBT development and supervisor well-being. You'll be able to use the Ascend RBT assessment to streamline supervision processes, track competency milestones, and provide consistent data-driven feedback. You'll be able to set clear, actionable goals that foster RBT skill development and confidence. You'll be able to implement feedback loops and regular check-ins that support continuous improvement and prevent burnout. You'll be able to enhance motivation and engagement in your RBTs by creating a supportive, growth-focused supervision environment. You'll also have access to downloadable resources, templates, and reflection prompts to help you apply what you're learning in this training to your unique supervision context. All right, before we dive in, let's go over a few housekeeping items. Here's how this training is going to work. You're going to hear several code words throughout the training. Be sure you write them down as they appear because you're going to need them for the post-training quiz. At the end of the training, you're going to complete a short quiz, including these words. And once you've passed this quiz, you will receive your CEU certificate. Now, feel free to pause or replay sections that you need if you want to process it more, or if something didn't make sense, you want to look at it again. This training is designed to fit your schedule, so make it fit your needs. I want to share a personal story with you. Early on in my career as a BCBA supervisor, I prided myself on always being available for my RBTs. If they had a question, I responded immediately to answer it. If they made an error, I corrected it right away. If data was incomplete, I filled the gaps myself. I was constantly troubleshooting, always in the weeds, and thought that this hands-on approach was the best way to support my team. But over time, I started to feel the weight of supervision in a way that was unsustainable. My caseload was high, my stress load was even higher, and my focus was not on quality supervision. It was on just getting through. I wasn't thinking about developing my RBTs or fostering their independence. I was thinking about checking the box, handling the immediate issue, and moving on to the next crisis. My supervision had become a series of quick fixes rather than an opportunity for growth for anybody. One day, I found myself rewriting an RBT session note at 10 p.m. for the third time that month. It hit me finally. This wasn't supervision. This was micromanagement disguised as support. I was so focused on fixing problems in the moment that I wasn't even giving my RBTs the tools to prevent those problems from happening in the first place. Then, one of the RBTs I worked with gave me this perspective that changed everything. In conversation, she reflected on an experience that she had with another supervisor who happened to be a mentor of mine. She shared that this supervisor never just told her what to do, but instead asked thoughtful questions that led her to reflect on her own understanding and decision making. She said that this approach helped her to feel more confident in applying ABA practices because she wasn't just receiving instructions, she was actively thinking through them. That reflection stuck with me. It made me realize that while I had been focused on making sure my RBTs did things correctly, I wasn't doing enough to help them develop the skills to problem solve independently. I decided to shift my approach. Instead of immediately answering questions or correcting mistakes, I started incorporating more reflective questions into my supervision. All right, hang tight. We'll follow up with this experience later on in the training. Here is your first code word, though. Your first code word is ascend. A-S-C-E-N-D, ascend. It's important to recognize that if you've been operating reactively, it's not because you're necessarily doing something wrong. Many supervisors fall into reactive patterns because of systemic barriers, heavy caseloads, limited resources, and organizational cultures that prioritize quick fixes over long-term solutions. Traditional supervision models often focus on compliance and task completion rather than skill development and growth. Without the right tools and support, it's easy to feel like reactive supervision is the only option. Believe me, I have been there. But with the strategies that we're going to cover in this course, you'll be able to break out of that cycle and create a more sustainable, effective approach to supervision. So let's be honest, there are some big obstacles standing in the way of proactive supervision. Maybe you're dealing with, feels like there's never enough time in the day to provide thorough, consistent supervision. Maybe you're dealing with that you're managing so many responsibilities that proactive supervision feels like a luxury that you just can't afford. Maybe you don't have access to tools that help streamline the supervision process. Or sometimes the systems in place prioritize quick fixes over meaningful development. Y'all, these barriers are real, but they're not unsurmountable. With the right strategies and tools, like the one that we're going to look at in this training, you can overcome them and create a supervision model that supports both you and your RBTs. Now that we've identified the challenges, let's dive into some solutions. This framework is designed to help you shift from reactive to proactive supervision using 4 key strategies. Identify your RBT strengths and areas for growth and set clear, measurable goals. Provide consistent, targeted feedback that reinforces positive behaviors and addresses challenges before they escalate. Use data to track progress and adjust goals as needed, ensuring that supervision remains focused and effective. And once the RBT consistently demonstrates mastery of their goals, reinforce these skills through applied practice and positive feedback. This step marks the completion of a defined supervision phase, celebrating the RBT's progress and ensuring that they are fully prepared to apply their competencies independently with their role. Each step of this framework is supported by Ascend, which provides the structure and tools needed to implement proactive supervision effectively. All right. First, let's look at the first step of this framework, Assessment and goal setting. This step involves identifying your RBT's current strengths and areas for growth. You'll want to conduct a baseline assessment of their skills, thinking about how they align to the RBT task list or particular competency skills, and utilize direct observations to help gather objective data. Once you've assessed their skills, you want to collaborate with your RBTs to set clear measurable goals. Research shows that goal setting is the most effective when our goals are specific, achievable, and time-bound, right? This approach not only provides direction, but also fosters motivation and engagement. Structured performance feedback and goal setting has been shown to enhance staff performance by providing clear expectations and measurable outcomes. So now I want to show you a little bit more about this Ascend RBT assessment tool that I've been telling you about and how you can utilize it to simplify and enhance this process for yourself. So the Ascend RBT assessment tool, Ascend stands for Achieving Success Through Competency, Ethics, and Nurture Development. This tool is designed to make your supervision process more efficient by providing clear, structured feedback that aligns with your RBT's development goals across multiple competency areas. So we're going to take a moment to look at a live demonstration, and I'm going to show you exactly how to set up the assessment. We'll walk through how to prepare for an assessment session, including identifying key competencies, setting clear expectations, and encouraging RBT self-assessment. This step will help create a collaborative environment where RBTs can feel engaged in their professional growth from the onset. Then we'll look at how to conduct the assessment. So we're going to examine the different parts of the Ascend tool, including the main assessment, the sub-assessments, and the prioritization sheet. And then I'll demonstrate how to evaluate an RBT's overall performance in the designated task, focusing on their competency, ethical decision-making, and professional development. This approach ensures a comprehensive understanding of your RBT skills and their behaviors based on holistic observations and outcomes rather than just isolated session data. Next, we're going to look at how to individualize the assessment needs. So once the assessment data is collected, we'll focus on tailoring the supervision approach to meet the unique needs of each RBT, which involves identifying specific strengths and areas for improvement using both qualitative and quantitative data, utilizing the prioritization sheet to rank competencies based on their impact on client outcomes and the RBT's professional development goals. We'll look at customizing developmental plans to fit each RBT's goals, considering factors like learning style, caseload, and personal challenges. This ensures that supervision is not only effective, but also meaningful to the RBT. We'll incorporate these results into feedback loops and finally embed them into individualized conversations with your ongoing supervision process. So I'll guide you through collecting a follow-up plan to revisit competencies over time and measure progress. We'll look at integrating feedback into routine supervision sessions for continuous improvement and encouraging reflection and self-monitoring by RBTs to foster a growth mindset and long-term development. So let's go for our walkthrough of the Ascend RBT assessment. All right, let's take a look at this Ascend RBT assessment that we've been talking about in this training. So the Ascend RBT assessment, again, is a tool to be utilized in supervision to help streamline competencies while giving you quantitative data, for example, that could be used towards an annual assessment or a quarterly assessment. There are multiple topics within the assessment. So for example, with this one, we're going to be looking at feedback utilization as the topic or skill of this assessment. And you'll also see each of these main topics is broken down into 5 subtopics. With feedback utilization, we're going to be looking at receiving feedback openly, feedback comprehension, applying feedback in practice, seeking clarification and follow-up, and feedback reflection. You're going to see spots on this main assessment page for the RBT's name, the supervisor's name, and a proposed date of reassessment. On the left here, you're going to see spots for RBT self-assessment, as well as the supervisor assessment scores. There is going to be an insert date option here next to each of these. So like you can see, I erased the insert date and put February 2025 as an example for this assessment. In these spots here, so in this line for the RBT initial assessment and this line for the supervisor initial assessment is where you can input scores. Our scoring criteria is below, scoring between 1 and 10 based on these different criteria. So let's put in some random self-assessment that our RBT gave us. And again, this self-assessment can be done before you come to session. It can be done as a part of session. It really is going to be based on what works best for you and your RBT and the RBT based on the schedule of demands that they have. Certainly to support an alignment with their well-being is going to try to figure out how to fit this into time that they are already paid for instead of asking them to do something off the clock. So we've got our RBT initial assessment, self-assessment here. And as a supervisor, we're going to go through and do the same thing. So for example, we're thinking about receiving feedback openly with our RBT. We feel that the RBT actively welcomes feedback and engages with it openly, demonstrates interest and growth, and thoughtfully reflects on feedback. So we're going to give them a score of 7 here. Feedback comprehension, we feel they're usually interpreting feedback correctly with occasional need for clarification and then showing some awareness of areas for needing improvement. So we're going to give them a 5 here. So let's look at applying feedback in practice. We feel that the RBT effectively applies feedback with consistent positive results, demonstrates proactive effort to refine skills and sustain improvements. We'll give them an 8 here. We're going to do the same, obviously, for the other two. For the purposes of demonstration, let's just throw in some scores here. So we've got our initial assessment done. We've scored based on our criteria below, between 0 and 1 for each of our 5 subtopics. You'll notice here that the total score is given in an average, in a percentage. We're going to see a couple of graphs here on the bottom. I'll show you those real quick. So the graphed score is going to compare the RBT initial, it's going to compare the RBT and the supervisor across all. So right now we only have data in for the initial assessment and it compares, again, the RBT to the supervisor feedback. When we have all 4 potential spots filled in. So we'll give this reassessment here just to show you for purposes of the data. We'll see the supervisor, the RBT reassessment comparatively and the supervisor reassessment comparatively. In this next graph, we're going to see the RBT's scores, their self-assessment scores comparatively between the initial and the reassessment. On the supervisor assessment graph, we're going to see the same, but it's going to be between the supervisor initial and the supervisor reassessment scores. There's also a graph that will be created for the initial assessment scores comparatively between the RBT and the supervisor. And then the same for the reassessment scores between the RBT and the supervisor. You'll see those comparative here. So there's a lot of different graphs created based on how you want to use the data and what you want to do with it, how you want to represent it, how you can utilize these supports and any further documentation that you utilize these assessment tools for. So we're going to go back to the main assessment here. We have filled in our scores. We've got, kind of got our average. We've looked at our scoring criteria. So further down at the bottom, you're going to see ratings and recommendations. And if further sub-assessment or prioritization is recommended for the particular topic. So you notice that all of this is color-coded. We're going to take a look at this total score percentage and the color that it corresponds to here on this rating scale. So we know that, here both of these averages give us a 70%, or within the 70%. So we're going to be here, and the recommendation for further looking at the particular subtopic of feedback utilization is recommended. There are a couple more tools that we can utilize past this point. One of the tools is sub-assessments for each of these 5 subtopics. The other tool is a prioritization worksheet. So obviously, we don't want to bite off too much at a time when it comes to supporting change or goal setting. So our skill prioritization sheet, which there is an active link here to go right to that sheet, gives us the opportunity to look at each of our score areas and prioritize what we want to tackle first and how we want to do it. So if we look back at our main assessment, we see that our lowest scored areas are here, this receiving feedback openly and feedback comprehension. So we can go back to our skill prioritization sheet and see that we want to look at receiving feedback openly and feedback comprehension. So now this next step is to be able to go through with your RBT and look at their thoughts and feelings in relation to each of these growth areas, as well as the effect that it has on the case. So with receiving feedback openly, let's say that our RBT has high interest in this. It is something that they really want to work on. The frequency of using receiving feedback openly is pretty consistent. We regularly apply the skill in daily tasks. The severity of its impact, you know, she's not terrible. Our RBT is not terrible at it. So there's some challenges, but they're manageable. The impact on the client, we know that it's could lead to potential issues in service delivery. And then time sensitivity, it can be addressed in a reasonable time frame. It's not terrible. So that gives us a score of around 18. And we'll see down here that falls in the medium priority based on the prioritization of the colors here. So with feedback comprehension, low interest in this particular topic, moderate, severe is, it's not terrible, but there are things we want to work on. It impacts our client, but there's low urgency to it. So this one falls under a 12, which again is medium priority. So if we were to look, for example, at some lower scores, you can already see the difference where based on the feedback comprehension scores we inputted, it is identified to be closer to a low priority compared to the scores that we have for receiving feedback openly are more of a high medium priority. So based on our scores here, it's suggesting that we are going to target receiving feedback openly first. So we have all of this on the skill prioritization sheet. And now we can utilize the next tool that I had mentioned, the sub-assessment. So if we go back to the main assessment, we see that we have 5 different subtopics up here, each of which is correlated to a live link that takes you to the sub-assessment. We can also get to our sub-assessment from the skill prioritization sheet by clicking the live link. So based on our skill prioritization sheet, receiving feedback openly is going to be our sub-assessment that we want to target potentially. So we open our sub-assessment, and it's very similar to the main assessment. It breaks down that particular sub-assessment it breaks down our subtopic into 10 sub-assessment topics that are all part of or related to or build upon each other to contribute to the subtopic. So receiving feedback openly, we're going to look at displaying openness to feedback, refraining from defensiveness, demonstrating a growth mindset, showing active listening during feedback, asking clarifying questions, maintaining a positive body language, expressing appreciation for feedback, demonstrating emotional regulation, accepting responsibility for growth areas, and following up on feedback. So here's our description for each of those, and we are going to utilize our rating score to give a score here. And so ideally, this is going to be done with your RBT to look at further breaking down our subtopic into be more specific and targeted areas of growth to focus. Again, you have a total score that gets calculated. I'm just going to throw in some random scores. And again, you're doing this with your RBT. So we're going to see that we've got a score here that we want to keep working on. This is going to identify for us some of our lower areas. We've got showing active listening during feedback, accepting responsibility for growth areas, and following up on feedback as potential specific skills or behaviors that we want to target. So keeping this in mind, these are going to be your things that you want to goal set around to continue to work on with your RBT. There are sample goals also for each of the correlated sub-assessments, which are, again, there's active links here that take you to it. And on these sample goals, it just breaks down each of these 10 growth areas in the sub-assessment to be more specific and suggest potential goals. So, follows up on feedback was one of ours that was lower. So here's our skill development goal, the action steps, and the evaluation method. So as we look at making our goals SMART goals, we may utilize these sample goals as part of that project. By all means, you do not have to use any of these sample goals, but they're examples. The main piece of this tool is to help your practice to become more efficient, to not only become more efficient, but to make it stronger and more effective, minimizing the response effort of you as a supervisor, as well as the RBT, but still not minimizing the impact of supervision or the effort of positive change to make in your RBT's life and treatment and all of the things. So my hope is that this tool is able to help your practice become more effective. This is going to offer that opportunity for feedback loops, and you're going to be working with your RBT side by side at utilizing this tool. You're going to be getting those self-assessment feedback from your RBT. You're going to be talking in collaboration with your RBT about the assessment scores. You're going to be utilizing the skill prioritization sheet to identify not only where is the most impactful place to affect treatment, but what interests the RBT also, because that is just as important. Having their input, having their collaboration is going to make your supervision a more effective experience for them. It's going to show your investment in them and give them an increased ownership of what's going on for them in their supervision experience, which will increase their motivation and willingness to participate. It becomes a positive trickle effect. Again, if you have any questions about anything with the assessment, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to answer questions or support your usage of utilizing this tool and developing it right into your practice. An important part of proactive supervision is empowering your RBTs to take ownership of their development. One effective way to achieve this is by having the RBTs complete a self-assessment before the supervision meetings. This encourages them to reflect on their competencies, identify areas where they feel confident, and highlight where they need support. Research supports the effectiveness of self-assessment and supervision. Self-assessment tools in behavior analysis promote greater self-awareness and autonomy in supervisees, leading to more effective supervision outcomes. Additionally, Daniels and Bailey in 2014 demonstrated that self-monitoring combined with supervisor feedback results in faster skill acquisition and increased competence among behavior technicians. Self-assessments help bridge the gap between supervisor expectations and RBT perceptions, making supervision sessions more productive and focused. Sellers, Valentino and LeBlanc in 2016 emphasized that reflective supervision, including self-assessment practices, fosters critical thinking and continuous improvement, enhancing both the supervisee's and the supervisor's experience. Time for a reflective prompt. I would like you to pause and reflect. Think about your current supervision process. How often do your RBTs actively contribute to their developmental goals? Jot down one way that you could incorporate self-assessments into your next supervision session. Now it's your turn to apply what we've learned. Let's practice. I want you to identify one RBT's strengths. What is a skill that this RBT consistently demonstrates well? So think about one of your RBTs and identify one of their strengths. Then identify a growth area. For this same RBT, what could this RBT improve on? Then we're going to set SMART goals. Write a goal that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound based on the growth area that you identified. Taking time to personalize your supervision in this way ensures that your feedback is both actionable and meaningful. While self-assessments are a valuable tool, RBTs may encounter barriers when integrating them into their routine. Let's explore some of these common challenges and then practical solutions to ensure successful implementation. Some RBTs may view self-assessments as just another task rather than a tool for growth. As a solution, you could try to frame the self-assessment as an opportunity for the RBTs to guide their own development rather than a mandatory exercise. Emphasize how their input shapes supervision goals and gives them a voice in the process. RBTs may also struggle to find time to complete these self-assessments before supervision meetings. Try to keep these self-assessments brief and targeted then. Use the Ascends customizable templates to focus on specific competencies rather than a comprehensive review every single time. RBTs might feel unsure about how to objectively assess their performance. A solution you could try could be to provide clear criteria and examples. Walk your RBTs through a sample self-assessment during an initial supervision session to ensure that they understand the expectations. Encourage them to reflect on specific behaviors and outcomes rather than general findings of success or failures. By addressing these barriers proactively, you'll create a supervision environment where RBTs feel empowered, engaged, and motivated to take an active role in their professional growth. All right, so let's go back to the story I was telling earlier. I changed my supervision approach and began asking more reflective questions of my supervisees. Questions like, what do you think the function of this behavior is? How do you know? What could you do differently next time? Or what ABA principles apply here and why? At first, my RBTs were caught off guard. They were used to being given direct answers, but over time, they started thinking more critically, applying ABA concepts more effectively, and feeling more confident in their own decision making. The most surprising part, my caseload didn't get any smaller, but my job somehow got easier. My RBTs were learning more, they were practicing better, and becoming more independent in their work. I no longer had to answer the same questions repeatedly or consistently fix mistakes because they were developing the problem-solving skills to handle challenges on their own. As a result, my supervision became more effective and my stress levels actually decreased. I was still busy, but I felt in control, and my time was spent guiding rather than putting out fires. And to be honest, guys, it also made the supervision experience a lot more fun for me and for the RBT. Now, this shift didn't happen overnight, and it took intentional effort to change my habits. But the difference that it made in my effectiveness as a supervisor and in my own well-being was undeniable. I wasn't just managing my caseload anymore. I was leading a team of RBTs who were thriving. And as they grew, so did I. That's why I am so passionate about helping other supervisors make this same shift. Proactive supervision isn't just about reducing stress. It's about fostering a culture of growth, confidence, and continuous improvement. I want to take a look at a few different case studies, see if you can relate to any of them. So first, let's dive into a case study that highlights the shift from reactive to proactive supervision. Here's our scenario. Alex here, a BCBA, is supervising an RBT named Taylor. Taylor consistently struggles with accurate data collection. Alex finds himself frequently correcting Taylor's mistakes after the fact, which is leading to frustration and growing a sense of burnout for the both of them. In this picture, doesn't he look burned out? What do you think that you would do with this situation? We could respond reactively. Alex could wait until errors occur, addressing them during supervision sessions and provide general feedback like, Taylor, you need to be more careful with data collection. And in this case, Taylor will likely feel criticized and overwhelmed, and the same mistakes are likely to continue. Or we could respond proactively. Instead of waiting for errors, Alex could conduct a baseline assessment of Taylor's data collection skills. This would identify specific gaps, such as misunderstanding how to record partial interval data. And together, they could set SMART goals. For example, by the end of the month, Taylor will achieve 90% accuracy in partial interval data collection across 3 consecutive sessions. Alex could then provide real-time feedback during observations and reinforce Taylor's improvements. And they also could encourage Taylor to complete the self-assessments before the supervision meeting to look at these particular skills. Over time, Taylor's data accuracy would probably improve, and both the supervisor and RBT experience would be less stressful and more satisfactory. Now, I want you to pause and reflect. Think about a time that you've had to repeatedly correct an RBT's performance. Write down how a proactive approach, like the one we talked about Alex using, could have changed the outcome. After you take this time to reflect, write down our second code word. Our second code word is balance. B-A-L-A-N-C-E. Balance. Proactive supervision looks different depending on the environment, right? Let's explore 2 case studies to see how strategies can be adapted based on the environment. Jamie supervises an RBT, Chris, who works in a client's home setting. Chris struggles with staying consistent due to frequent family interruptions and a lack of structure. Jamie feels reactive, often addressing issues after they occur. A proactive way to address this situation could look like Jamie collaborating with Chris to set clear expectations for managing distractions, and together they create a structured supervision plan. They can schedule regular check-ins and use the Ascend RBT assessment to track competency milestones, focusing on flexibility within the home setting. Now let's look at Jordan, who oversees multiple RBTs in a busy clinic setting. One RBT, Sam, shows signs of burnout due to high caseload and limited feedback. Jordan's reactive approach has been to offer support only when Sam voices concerns. Or, to be proactive, Jordan could implement regular feedback loops and schedule bi-weekly reflection sessions with Sam instead. They can use the Ascend RBT assessment to monitor workload balance and set goals for professional growth, ensuring that Sam feels supported before burnout escalates. So let's pause and reflect. Which supervision environment do you relate more to, the home or the clinic? Write down one proactive strategy from these case studies that you can apply in your own setting. Now it's your turn to think critically about a complex supervision scenario. You are supervising Riley, an RBT who excels in technical skills, but really struggles with interpersonal communication when interacting with a client's family. Riley becomes defensive when feedback is provided, and you find yourself avoiding the topic to prevent conflict. Has anybody been there? What would you do in this situation? I want you to write down a proactive supervision strategy that you can use to support Riley's development while maintaining a positive supervisory relationship. After reflecting, consider how strategies like goal setting, self-assessment, and positive reinforcement could help Riley to improve their interpersonal skills without feeling criticized. Now we get into the second step of our framework, which is proactive feedback. This means providing consistent, targeted feedback that focuses on reinforcing positive behaviors and addressing challenges before they escalate. Effective feedback is timely, specific, and constructive. According to Hattie and Timperley in 2007, feedback has the greatest impact when it is immediate and focused on task-related behaviors rather than personal attributes. Proactive feedback significantly improves RBT performance, as immediate and targeted feedback not only enhances skills, but also increases confidence and engagement. With the Ascend RBT assessment, you can document feedback in real time, ensuring that your RBTs receive regular guidance and support. This proactive approach prevents small issues from becoming bigger problems and helps your RBTs to stay on track with their development. Now that you've explored proactive feedback techniques, let's dive into what happens when challenges arise despite your best efforts. Here are some real-world troubleshooting scenarios and strategies to handle them. All right, here's the sitch. You notice that one of your RBTs, Taylor, frequently misses supervision sessions, citing schedule conflicts and last-minute emergencies. What are some troubleshooting steps that you could consider? Well, first, you might want to consider the root cause. Is this a scheduling issue or is the RBT feeling overwhelmed? Then you could work with Taylor to find a proactive solution. Use the Ascend RBT assessment to create a consistent supervision schedule, collaborate with Taylor to identify the barriers, and adjust expectations as needed. Now reflect real quick. Write down how you would approach Taylor. What proactive strategies could you implement to prevent this from becoming a recurring issue? Here's another situation. Your RBT Sam becomes defensive when receiving constructive feedback and often shuts down during supervision sessions. Here are some troubleshooting steps that you could try. Let's start by reframing feedback. Focus on strengths before addressing areas of improvement. Use specific behavior-based language. And then some collaborative goal setting next. Involve Sam in identifying areas for growth to foster ownership and reduce defensiveness. Take a moment to reflect. Think of an RBT who struggled with feedback. How can reframing your approach create a more collaborative supervision environment? Jot down a sample feedback statement that you might use. In our last situation, one of your RBTs, Chris, is inconsistent with data collection, leading to gaps in client progress tracking. How could we troubleshoot this one? First, let's identify the gaps. Use the Ascend RBT assessment to track data patterns and identify specific areas of inconsistency. Then, provide real-time feedback. Observe Chris in session and offer immediate feedback on data collection techniques. And then, set some SMART goals with him. Collaborate on a goal like achieve 95% data collection accuracy for 3 consecutive sessions. Again, take a moment to reflect. Outline how you could address inconsistent data collection with one of your RBTs. What proactive steps can you take to ensure accuracy moving forward? This brings us to our third step in the framework, continuous data collection and reflection. We know that data is the backbone of anything we do in ABA, including effective supervision. It helps you monitor progress, identify patterns, and make informed decisions about your RBT's development. Research in ABA highlights the importance of data-driven decision-making. Sellers, Valentino, and LeBlanc in 2016 demonstrated that regularly reviewing performance data allowed supervisors to adjust goals and strategies effectively, leading to better developmental outcomes for RBTs. Newer approaches also emphasize using technological tools like the Ascend RBT assessment to simplify data collection and interpretation, reducing administrative burdens while enhancing accuracy. Using Ascend, you can easily collect and analyze data, making it simple to track progress over time. Reflection is also key. Take time to review the data with your RBTs, discuss successes and challenges, and collaboratively decide on next steps. This fosters a culture of continuous improvement and accountability. Data collection is only effective when it is paired with reflection. Reviewing performance data helps identify patterns and guides your supervision approach. Let's pause and reflect. Think about how you currently collect and use supervision data. Write down one strategy that you can implement to make your data collection more efficient and meaningful. Let's practice giving proactive feedback. Complete the following exercise. First, choose an RBT session. Think of a recent session that you had. Then identify a positive behavior. What did that RBT do well? Next, write a feedback statement. Craft a feedback statement that is timely, specific, and focuses on reinforcing the positive behaviors. Providing feedback like this not only reinforces positive behaviors, but also fosters a supportive supervision environment. Once you're done with this practice activity, let's write down your third code word. Our third code word is growth. Growth, growth. All right, our final step in the framework is to solidify mastery and celebrate achievement. Once your RBT consistently demonstrates mastery of their goals, it's important to reinforce these skills through applied practice and positive feedback. This step marks the completion of a defined supervision phase. Celebrating achievements not only acknowledges the hard work of your RBTs, but it also reinforces the behaviors and skills that you want to maintain. Deci and Ryan in 2000, in their self-determination theory, support the idea that recognition and positive reinforcement are key drivers of motivation, job satisfaction, and long-term engagement in professional development. With Ascend, you can easily track where goals are met and document these milestones. Taking time to celebrate progress keeps motivation high and prepares your RBTs for the next set of challenges, ensuring continuous growth and development. Okay, so let's go back to my story again. After shifting my supervision style from reactive to proactive, I saw major improvements in my RBT's confidence and problem-solving skills. But there was still a challenge. How could I make this process more structured, more consistent, and easier to manage across a high caseload? I knew that consistent learning, clear expectations, and actionable feedback were key to RBT growth, but balancing all of that while juggling other responsibilities felt so overwhelming still. That's when I realized I needed a better system, one that would take the guesswork out of supervision and help me provide structured, high-quality feedback without adding more to my plate. That's why I created Ascend. Ascend is a tool designed to streamline supervision, track competency development, and support long-term RBT growth in a way that was both effective and sustainable. With Ascend, I could track RBT progress over time and identify skill gaps early. I could provide structured, actionable feedback tailored to each RBT's individual growth areas. I could reinforce learning consistently rather than just correcting mistakes when they happened. And it has helped me support my RBTs at taking ownership of their development by giving them a clear roadmap for improvement. As I implemented Ascend with my RBTs, I noticed something even more meaningful than just skill development. My RBTs felt truly valued in the supervision process. They understood that supervision wasn't just about checking boxes or evaluating their ability to run a program. They could see that I was fully invested in their learning, growth, and success, not just in the direct application of ABA, but in all aspects of their professional development. They felt appreciated as individuals, knowing that I cared about helping them become the best professionals that they could be. Not just great behavior technicians on the floor, but strong communicators, collaborative team members, and ethical decision makers. They saw that I wasn't just there to correct their mistakes. I was there to guide them, support them, and to help them build careers, not just jobs. The more I develop, the more passionate I become, helping RBTs grow beyond their session work, developing the confidence and skills they need to thrive in all aspects of their role. And Ascend gave me the structure and tools to make that vision a reality. While proactive supervision offers many benefits, integrating tools like Ascend into your practice can feel overwhelming. It's common for supervisors to have concerns when adopting new tools or shifting their supervision approach. Let's explore both the common barriers and fears that supervisors may face, along with practical solutions to overcome them. Supervisors often feel that they don't have enough time to conduct detailed assessments and provide consistent supervision alongside their other responsibilities. Have you ever felt that way? Because I know I have. One solution that we can take into consideration is using Ascend's built-in templates and automated tracking features to reduce the time spent on setup and documentation. Start small by incorporating quick sub-assessments into your routine and gradually expand to full assessments as you become more comfortable. Additionally, streamline supervision sessions by focusing on high priority competencies identified through Ascend. So right here, we're looking at utilizing the multiple different assessment options as well as the prioritization worksheet, which can help focus in on what it is we want to be working on so that we're not trying to bite off all parts of the assessment to fix at one time. Next, how about the learning curve with new technology? Adopting a new tool can feel intimidating, especially when juggling a full caseload. Take into consideration that it is natural to feel uncertain when using new technology. Take advantage of Ascend's training resources and support materials. Begin with the basic features like the main assessment, and you can gradually then explore to more advanced tools as your confidence grows. Remember, you don't need to change everything overnight. Small, consistent adjustments lead to lasting improvements. Here again, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Some supervisors may worry that using a structured tool like Ascend will limit their flexibility or personal style. Take into consideration that Ascend is designed to complement, not replace your expertise. This tool provides structure for efficiency, but it leaves room for personalized feedback and goal setting. Think of it as a framework to enhance your supervision, not a rigid system to follow. RBTs might be hesitant about increased assessments or feel nervous about being evaluated more frequently. Frame Ascend as a collaborative growth opportunity. Emphasize how it helps identify strengths and supports professional development. Encouraging RBTs to participate in self-assessment and goal setting fosters a sense of ownership over their growth and reduces their anxiety. Supervisors may feel overwhelmed by the volume of data generated through continuous assessment. Know that if you focus on the most critical competencies first, using the prioritization sheet to target areas that have been greatest impact on client outcomes, this can help the overwhelm. Schedule regular, manageable data reviews to prevent backlog and use Ascend's visual progress tracking to simplify complex data sets. Here's one that most of us have probably encountered, unfortunately: organizational pressures and systemic barriers. Heavy caseloads, limited resources, and organizational demands can make proactive supervision feel like a luxury. Share the long-term benefits of proactive supervision with your organization. Highlight how it leads to better outcomes for RBTs, clients, and supervisors alike. When possible, advocate for systematic changes that support proactive practices like allocating dedicated supervision time or adopting streamlined tools like Ascend. By addressing these barriers and common fears, you can integrate Ascend into your supervision routine effectively and with confidence. Remember, this isn't about overhauling everything at once. It's about taking manageable steps towards a more balanced and effective supervision process. You may identify there's a lot of things you want to change in your supervision, and that's okay. There may be a few things you want to change, and that's okay too. But remember, any small step in the right direction is progress. Now, our fourth code word is here. Take a time to write it down. Our fourth code word is proactive. 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 Let's pause and reflect. Consider the barriers that we've discussed. Identify the barrier that resonates most with your current supervision challenge. Write down one actionable step that you can take to overcome it. To recap, this framework that we've been discussing includes 4 key steps: assessment and goal setting, identifying strengths and then setting clear, measurable goals, proactive feedback, providing consistent, targeted feedback that reinforces positive behaviors, continuous data collection and reflection, using data to track progress and adjust goals, and solidifying mastery and celebrating achievement, reinforcing mastered skills and celebrating success before moving on to new goals. Pause and reflect. Review the framework and reflect on which step you feel most confident in and which step you'd like to improve. Write down one goal for enhancing your supervision practice based on this reflection. To help you implement this framework, we've included downloadable resources such as goal-setting templates, feedback checklists, and supervision tracking forms. These tools will help streamline your process and ensure consistency in your supervision sessions. But remember, this framework isn't just about helping your RBTs grow. It's about creating a balanced supervision practice that supports your own well-being too. Proactive supervision reduces stress, prevents burnout, and allows you to focus on what matters most, fostering growth for both your team and yourself. Take time to pause and reflect. Reflect on how proactive supervision could improve your own work-life balance. Write down one area where you can apply this model to reduce stress and enhance your own professional satisfaction. Now that you have a framework, it's time to put it into action. Start by reviewing your current supervision practices. Identify areas where you're being reactive and think about how to shift towards a more proactive approach. Pause and reflect. What is one area in your supervision where you feel more reactive? Write down a strategy that you can implement to shift towards a more proactive approach. But don't forget, your well-being is part of this journey. Supervision isn't just about checking boxes or hitting goals. It's about creating a sustainable, fulfilling role for yourself as a BCBA. Pause and reflect. What is one self-care strategy that you can integrate into your supervision routine? Write down how this strategy will help you maintain balance and effectiveness in your role. Use the tools provided in this course to help structure your supervision sessions. Set specific goals with your RBTs, provide regular feedback, and use data to guide your decisions. And don't forget to celebrate achievements along the way. Recognizing progress is key to maintaining motivation and engagement. The transition to proactive supervision might take time, but the benefits are so worth it, y'all. You'll find yourself less stressed, more effective, and better able to support your RBTs in their professional growth. It's time for our fifth word. Our fifth code word is clarity. CLARITY, clarity. If you have any questions or need additional support, man, I got you covered. Check out the resources, troubleshooting guides, and additional materials. You can also reach out to me if you need support or assistance with Ascend or supervision strategies. I encourage you to connect with other supervisors in your network also. Sharing experiences and learning from each other can be incredibly valuable as you implement new strategies. Additionally, consider exploring professional development opportunities to continue strengthening your supervision skills and competencies. Thank you so much for participating in this training. I hope that you've gained valuable insights and practical tools to enhance your supervision practices. Before you go, don't forget to complete the post-training quiz using the code words that we've collected. Once you've passed the quiz, you'll receive your CEU certificate. I appreciate your dedication to professional growth and supporting the development of your RBTs. Here's to smarter and more effective supervision and a more balanced, fulfilling role as a BCBA for you. Thank you. Now that you've completed this training, it's time to take action. To make the most of what you've learned, I've outlined a simple 30-day action plan to help you integrate proactive supervision strategies into your daily routine. During week 1, let's set the foundation. Review your current practices. Reflect on how you currently supervise and identify one area where you tend to be reactive. Then, let's implement the Ascend assessment. Choose one RBT to utilize for being able to practice Ascend. Focus on setting clear, measurable goals. After week 1, reflect. Write down how your first Ascend assessment went, what worked well, and what adjustments could you make. In week 2, we're going to build proactive feedback loops. Provide timely feedback. Focus on giving feedback that is immediate, specific, and constructive. Encourage RBTs to use self-assessment. Have your RBT complete a self-assessment before your supervision meeting. And then create a feedback script for one of your RBTs that highlights both strengths and areas for growth. In week 3, we're going to focus on strengthening data collection and reflection. Collect continuous data. Use Ascend to track RBT progress in real time. Schedule reflection time. Try setting aside 15 minutes at the end of each work week to review supervision data and reflect on what's working. And then reflect. Write down one insight that you gained from your data review. How will you adjust your supervision approach based on this information? And then in week 4, focus on solidifying mastery and celebrating success. Acknowledge accomplishments. Celebrate RBT milestones and reflect on your own growth as a supervisor. And adjust supervision goals. Identify new goals based on the progress made over the last month. And then here's your last action step. List one RBT success story from the past month and describe how proactive supervision contributed to that success. And then one final reflection. How has proactive supervision changed your approach? What's one long-term goal that you'll set for yourself to continue refining your supervision practice? By following this action plan, you'll not only support your RBTs more effectively, but you'll also create a supervision process that is sustainable, efficient, and fulfilling for you as a BCBA. The journey to proactive supervision starts now. Let's keep building on this momentum. Throughout this training, we focus on supporting RBTs and strategies to prevent burnout while providing supervision. But now I want to take this bonus time to shift to focus on you, the BCBA. Your well-being is just as important, and prioritizing self-care isn't just about feeling better. It's about being a more effective leader, making better decisions, and sustaining your passion for this field. When you take care of yourself, you show up as the best version of yourself for your RBTs, your clients, and your own career growth. Supervision is one of the most rewarding parts of being a BCBA. But if you have ever felt exhausted, stretched too thin, irritable, or like supervision is just another demand instead of a passion, you're not alone. In this bonus module, we're talking about supervisor self-care because a burned out supervisor can't provide effective supervision. We'll go over the 3 biggest burnout risks, quick fixes, and simple daily habits to help you take care of yourself while taking care of others. All right, I want to start with a personal story. This topic is near and dear to me because over my career, I've experienced multiple points of burnout. And every single time, the signs were the same: irritability, exhaustion, and a creeping thought, do I even want to keep doing this? Each time I hit burnout, I could trace it back to the same core issues: taking on too much, failing to set boundaries between work and my personal life, and pretending that I enjoyed something that deep down wasn't fulfilling me anymore. What I've come to learn about burnout is that it's not something you fix once and never deal with again. It's a continuous growth opportunity. Managing it requires ongoing self-awareness, protecting my well-being, and making decisions that align with my values. Many years ago, in my first job after completing my master's program, I found myself at a crossroads. The slow, steady buildup of burnout didn't just impact my work. It seeped into my personal life, straining and ultimately damaging my most important relationships. And the result? Divorce, loss of friendships, and a painful realization that my job had taken more from me than I had ever intended it to. Now, at that time, I was in a high-level position as a clinical director. The title felt great. It validated my hard work and my professional growth. But the company that I was working for at the time didn't align with my personal values, nor did they support a work-life balance. I felt like I needed to always be available, constantly checking emails, answering calls, and working late into the night. I had convinced myself that my presence was essential, that the company needed me at all times. And then came a profound moment while I was in therapy, one that changed my perspective entirely. My therapist looked at me and she said, no matter your title, no matter how important you think you are replaceable at your job. But in your personal life, that that is where you're irreplaceable. Now that statement hit me really hard, as you can imagine. I had sacrificed my well-being and my relationships for that job that at the end of the day would replace me in an instant, especially if I burned out completely. The true cost of my lack of boundaries wasn't just exhaustion. It was losing touch with who I was and what truly mattered to me. A funny little anecdote about that. At this time, too, I was job searching, again, not knowing what I wanted to do. I love the field of ABA, but I was exhausted. We've kind of all been there, I'm sure, at a certain point. And as I was searching through Indeed, I found a job posting for our local like bug exterminator company that had pretty good pay. And I remember texting my husband saying, "What if I just go work with bugs?" They pay good. It's not people. I'll just go work with bugs. And then thankfully he said, no, you're not that desperate. Let's figure out what's broken and let's fix it. So since then, I have learned that burnout is not just about overworking. It's about losing yourself in the process. No, passion is important to me. And when I'm not acting in alignment with that, it takes a toll on every part of my life. After coming to the realization that I was the cause of my burnout, my perspective, my behaviors, my lack of boundaries, I knew that if I wanted things to change, I had to change. I started slowly making shifts in both my mindset and my daily habits. I began balancing my schedule, blocking out time to complete work demands, and setting limits on how much of myself I was going to give to my job outside of work hours. I turned off my phone at a set time each night, and I made a habit of leaving my computer in the car or at the office so that I wouldn't be tempted to work into the night. These small but intentional changes started to bring back a sense of control and balance in my life. But even with these adjustments, I eventually reached another realization. This job was no longer in alignment with my passions and goals, and so, like many of us do at this point in their careers, I made the decision to leave. With a fresh start at a new job, I felt hopeful, but it also brought out the same personality traits that had contributed to my burnout in the past. I wanted to work hard. I wanted to be important. I wanted to be well liked and accepted. I wanted to be successful, and slowly but surely, I started creeping back into the same old patterns that I had worked so hard to break. I didn't work as late into the night before, but I still made myself too available. I had no clear boundaries on when I would stop responding to messages or phone calls. I took on too many cases because I didn't know how to say no. I worked more billable hours than required, not because I had to, but because it felt good to receive praise for my work ethic. And before I knew it, the imbalance had returned, and so had that familiar feeling of exhaustion and frustration. Here I was, once again questioning whether I even wanted to stay in the field. And why? Because I let my boundaries slip, because my values became cloudy, because I fell back into the habit of prioritizing work over my own well-being. See, I told you this was constant work, right? So there I was again, at a crossroads once more. I had figured out what truly worked for me and what didn't. I needed to redefine what was in alignment with my ultimate goals and values. I started setting clearer boundaries and developing self-care practices, but ultimately, these didn't align with the company I was at, which brings me to where I am today. Recognizing that I had hit burnout again in my career, I made it my continual mission to prevent myself from ever reaching that place again. 2 times was too many. This wasn't just about fixing my schedule or setting surface level boundaries. It was about deep self-awareness and defining my non-negotiables. One of the strongest values that I identified in my job search was that my family would absolutely come first. If a job couldn't support that, then we weren't compatible, plain and simple. And yes, there have been times that I have had to let go of really good opportunities that didn't honor this core value. But in the end, when I've honored my boundaries and stayed in alignment, with what truly matters to me, I've always felt better. I have felt happier, healthier, and more trusting of my place in this field because I know that I am here for a reason. And it's not just because I love this work. It's because I'm meant to do this work, but only if I can do it in a way that sustains me. This is an everyday practice for me. Every single day, I face decisions. Should I take on more cases? Should I commit to this new project? Should I say yes to this opportunity? And I've had to learn to pause before answering, to check in with my boundaries and values, and to make sure that when I say yes, it's a strong yes, not a people-pleasing, obligation-filled yes. I take intentional steps to prevent burnout, not as a one-time fix, but as a daily commitment. I set boundaries, I identify my non-negotiables and stick to them. I remind myself that my worth isn't measured by how much I work, but by how well I take care of myself so that I can show up fully for my clients, my team, my family, and most importantly, for myself. I'm not perfect. I still definitely have growth to do. I still make mistakes, and I still have to remind myself to stay in alignment with my values. But here's what I know for sure. Burning out in this field is not an option for me. And because of that, my best efforts are no longer placed in just working harder. They are placed in self-care and burnout prevention. My experiences have completely changed who I am and how I work. I realized that if I didn't take care of myself, I couldn't be the best supervisor. And this is why I am so passionate about supervision. It starts with us as supervisors to help build a field that is healthy and balanced. When we find that balance within our own practice, we are able to touch the lives of others, especially our supervisees, with that same light. We know all too well that this field is a high burnout field. And why are we okay with that? In this bonus burnout prevention toolkit, I want to share with you some practical strategies that I have used to target my own personal burnout and realign myself in this field so that I can gift others with that same light. And they too can continue shining bright in this field that we all love so much. Now, it's important to realize that burnout isn't just a feeling. It's a cycle that impacts your work, your stress levels, and even your ability to make decisions. Here are the three biggest burnout risks for BCBA supervisors. Emotional exhaustion, constantly solving problems and answering questions all day drains your energy. The signs for this emotional exhaustion can typically look like feeling mentally drained, irritable, short-tempered, or struggling to focus during supervision. Compassion fatigue. Supervisors take on the emotional weight of their RBTs' struggles, right? Typical signs for this can look like feeling overly responsible for your RBT performance or struggling to emotionally separate from work. And work-life spillover. Supervision bleeds into our personal lives, y'all. Checking emails at night, thinking about work nonstop. Signs of this can typically look like feeling like you never mentally clock out or wondering if you should leave the field altogether. So how do we prevent these from taking over our supervision experience? Let's go over some simple actionable fixes for each of these burnout risks. Quick fix one, managing emotional exhaustion. Our first burnout risk is looking at emotional exhaustion, that feeling of always putting out fires. The solution? Let's use structured time management strategies to regain control over your schedule and your energy. This includes setting supervision office hours, strategically time blocking your schedule to plan weekly demands, and establishing boundaries for non-negotiable priorities. So let's look at the fix, time management and boundaries. You could try setting supervision office hours. So instead of answering questions all day, set specific times that your supervisees can check in. One thing that was really helpful for me was to schedule supervision sessions ahead of time. Block off time for your supervision sessions in advance to create a structure, prevent last-minute scheduling stress, and ensure dedicated focus time for each of your RBTs. Using time blocking for weekly demands was also helpful. Planning out blocks of time for tasks such as documentation, supervision prep, and personal development ensuring that the workload feels more manageable. Another thing that has been helpful is to include email time blocks. So instead of checking emails all throughout the day, I started setting specific blocks for email management, which helped me compartmentalize the work and prevent distractions throughout the day. When I was balancing home and school contracts in my previous job, I set boundaries to follow my schedule as much as possible. Now, I know things changed every so often, or most of the time, but instead of doing this haphazardly and going to a schedule change haphazardly, I adjusted the time blocks in the morning and then tried my best to stay in integrity with that new schedule. And when unexpected changes came up, I knew that there were things I had to drop and that needed to be okay. The most important piece of this fix, I think, is really recognizing the non-negotiables and boundaries. So when there are things that I couldn't commit to in my schedule, especially commitments that supported my family, I had to hold firm to boundaries that allowed me to be in alignment with my values. I identified non-negotiables and I stuck with them. And I ensured that I was prioritizing both my professional responsibilities and my personal well-being. It wasn't easy, but I think this has been the most powerful efforts of change that has contributed to fighting burnout for me in my career. So if you're like me and you struggle with taking on too many cases, wanting to be liked, and overworking for praise, try this new strategy. The power of the pause. Train yourself to pause before saying yes to new responsibilities and ask, does this align with my values? Do I have capacity for this? Will this contribute to burnout? If you struggle with responding to messages at all hours and not setting tech boundaries, try this strategy. Technology boundaries for work-life balance. Try setting for yourself no work zones, designating times when you will not respond to work messages. Use autoresponders or status updates to set expectations for response times. We have technology for a reason, right? Let's use it to our advantage. If you struggle wanting to be important, well-liked, and successful, which leads to overcommitting, try this new strategy. Redefining success in supervision. Instead of measuring success by hours worked, start measuring it by the growth of your supervisees, how balanced and sustainable your leadership is, or the longevity of your career. As you become more aware of your limits and values, you integrate them into your supervision practice. Leading by example and making self-care a core part of your supervision becomes very impactful for your RBTs and your supervisees. You want to make sure that you're encouraging them to set their own boundaries. Model that work-life balance by not overworking yourself in front of them. Have open discussions about burnout prevention during your supervision meetings. Make it blend cohesively together. We are, as supervisors, a powerful stand for the future of our field. We can't let go of that. Why do these strategies work? Well, it gives you control over your energy and prevents decision fatigue, which allows you to focus on high-impact tasks without feeling overwhelmed. Our second burnout risk is compassion fatigue. When we take on too much responsibility for our RBTs or our supervisees' struggles, a small shift in perspective can make all of the difference, along with recognizing our burnout signs. It's important to recognize early signs of burnout because these build up over time. So you want to look for irritability, exhaustion, feelings of disconnection from your work. Try something like a self-check-in system. Develop a personal burnout scale for yourself to recognize early warning signs before reaching a breaking point, and then check in with yourself routinely. Instead of absorbing the stress of your supervisees, shift into a coaching mindset. When you have an RBT that's struggling, ask yourself, what lesson can I teach in this moment? Or how can I guide them to solve this for themselves? It takes an empowering shift into the work that you're doing and also empowers them to take ownership of the work that they're doing. Why do these strategies work? Well, it prevents you from taking on every challenge as your own while still being supportive and again, empowering your supervisee to make positive growth for themselves, which in the end is really what's going to make a sustainable difference. Our third burnout risk is work-life spillover. When supervision never stops because your brain is always in work mode, let's look at knowing our values and creating rituals. It's important to know what's important to you and what you're willing to give up or bend with. Identify your non-negotiables and follow through with them. Try a values alignment check. Regularly assess for yourself. Does my current job align with my personal and professional values? Are my boundaries being respected? Am I sacrificing too much of myself for this role? You could also, routine-wise, consider trying an end of the workday ritual. Before closing your laptop, try these things. Write down your top 3 priorities for tomorrow, acknowledge one thing that you did well today, and step away from work. Physically leave your workspace. Why would this work? Well, it helps your brain recognize that the workday is over so that you can mentally recharge. Supervision is a long game, you guys. If you're burned out, you can't provide consistent guidance to your RBTs or anybody else. Taking care of yourself allows you to take better care of your team. So let's pause and reflect. What is one burnout prevention strategy that you're going to start using today? Write it down and commit to prioritizing yourself because great supervisors don't just take care of others, they take care of themselves too.